I raised my daughter alone, but she replaced me with her stepdad on her wedding day. Now she begs for forgiveness, but I gave her a lesson she won't forget. I taught her a lesson she won't soon forget. I'm a 46-year-old single father who raised my daughter, Emily, now 26, primarily alone after her mother, Vanessa, left when Emily was just 5. Yes, Vanessa simply abandoned us. There wasn't a major argument or any lead-up. One day she mentioned needing space and then vanished. I later understood her reasons, but I'll save that revelation for further along in this narrative. So, I was left to navigate raising a child by myself. It wasn't simple, but I managed. I put in long hours, ensured Emily had everything necessary, and was present for all the small and significant moments of her life. For 12 years it was just the two of us. Emily was my entire world, and I believe I did a commendable job. I was there for every scraped knee, every school function, every challenging day. Of course, she'd inquire about her mother occasionally, particularly as she grew older. Where is she? Why did she leave? Was it my fault? That last question always shattered me. I'd reassure her, no, sweetheart, it wasn't your fault. Your mom loves you. She just needed to be elsewhere. I never spoke ill of Vanessa, even though, frankly, I wanted to. I figured Emily would form her own conclusions as she matured. Years later, when Emily turned 17, Vanessa unexpectedly reappeared. It was a typical Saturday afternoon. I was outside tending to the lawn while Emily was upstairs studying for a history test. The doorbell chimed, and I assumed it was a neighbor or a delivery. But when I opened the door, there she was, Vanessa. She looked different, very polished, carrying an expensive handbag, and smiling as if we were old friends reconnecting over coffee. "James," she said so sweetly, as if nothing had ever happened. Before I could even formulate a response, Emily came downstairs and froze at the sight of her mother. She whispered, "Mom," as if unsure if she was dreaming. Vanessa brightened, opening her arms. Emily rushed into them, and they embraced as if no time had passed. Meanwhile, I just stood in the doorway, feeling like a complete stranger in my own home. I wish I could say that was the worst of it, but no, Vanessa wasn't just back for a friendly visit. She arrived armed with a completely different narrative, one where I was the antagonist. As much as I wanted to reveal the truth about how damaging Vanessa had been, I refrained, not wanting to break Emily's heart. Over the next few weeks, Emily began spending more and more time with her. Lunches, shopping trips, you name it. I didn't want to prevent them from reconnecting. Emily deserved to know her mother. But Vanessa wasn't just reconnecting. She was reinterpreting the past. She told Emily she had left because I was controlling, that I made her life impossible. She asserted that she stayed away all those years because she didn't feel safe returning. And the most difficult part? Emily started to believe her. She didn't explicitly say, "I believe Mom," but the questions began. "Why didn't you ever try to find her, Dad? Why didn't you let her back sooner?" As if I'd been keeping the door closed all these years. It wasn't just Vanessa either. She brought along her new husband, Greg. Now, Greg didn't seem like a bad person. He's one of those excessively polite types who smiles frequently and says little. But Vanessa portrayed him as some kind of savior, the ideal stepfather who was here to fill the voids I had supposedly created. I could sense the shift in Emily. She started viewing her mother and Greg as this flawless family, while I was just the one who handled the everyday chores when they weren't around. One day, Emily confronted me with, "Mom said you didn't want her around, is that true?" I swear it felt like a punch to the chest. I tried to remain calm. "No, Emily, that's not true. Your mom left because she wanted to. I didn't stop her. I didn't even know where she went." She didn't respond, just nodded, as if uncertain what to believe. That was the hardest part. Seeing my own daughter doubt me after everything we had shared. Vanessa kept pushing their one big happy family facade. She'd arrive with Greg, all smiles, picking up Emily for another outing. I'd watch them depart, feeling like an outsider in my own daughter's life. I thought I just had to wait it out, let Emily come to her senses. But honestly, I wasn't sure how much longer I could endure watching Vanessa rewrite history and establish herself as the heroine of Emily's narrative. So a few years passed and Emily is now 26, engaged to her boyfriend Ryan. I like the guy. He's reliable, works diligently, treats Emily well, and doesn't come across as a know-it-all like some of the other guys she dated. When she told me they were getting married, I was genuinely happy for her. I imagined this would be one of those milestones where we could reconnect, you know? I pictured us collaborating on the plans, laughing about how stressful weddings are supposed to be, and honestly I thought I'd play a significant role. I mean, I raised her, so walking her down the aisle was always something I simply assumed I'd do. First, it seemed things were moving in that direction. Emily asked for my help with the guest list and even shared some venue ideas with me. She seemed enthusiastic about including me, and I told her I'd assist with some of the expenses. I'm not wealthy or anything, but I had saved a bit over the years and thought it would be a kind gesture. Of course, Vanessa was always present in the periphery of every conversation. She'd offer suggestions about the wedding flowers, catering, even Emily's dress. Initially, I tried to ignore it. It wasn't my place to tell Emily whom to heed. But then Vanessa began positioning herself at the center of the plans. She'd say things like, "Oh, Greg and I have connections with this amazing photographer," or "Greg's friend owns a venue, and he could give us a great deal." Emily seemed completely on board, which stung a little, but I let it go. This was her wedding after all. Things were progressing smoothly until Emily and I went out for dinner one evening. It was meant to be a casual occasion, just catching up and discussing wedding matters. We were at this small diner we used to frequent when she was younger, and I was feeling quite nostalgic, honestly. We were halfway through our burgers when she delivered the news. "Dad, I've been thinking about the ceremony," she began, looking down at her plate. I nodded, assuming she wanted advice or something. "Yeah, what about it?" She took a deep breath and said, "I think I want Greg to walk me down the aisle." I froze for a second. I thought I'd misheard her. "Greg," I repeated, trying to maintain a steady voice. She nodded, still not looking at me. "Yeah, he's been such a big part of my life these past few years, and Mom thought it would be meaningful." There it was. Mom thought. Vanessa's influence was evident. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there staring at her. This was supposed to be my moment. I'd been there for everything. Every school event, every tough day, every accomplishment. And now she wanted Greg, a man who entered her life halfway through it, to take my place. "Okay." I finally managed, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Emily looked relieved, as if she had expected me to erupt. "I just think it would mean a lot to everyone, you know? It's not about replacing you or anything. Not about replacing me. Then what in the world was it about?" The rest of the dinner was a blur. I believe I nodded a lot and made some uninspired comments about the food being good, but inside I was seething. How could she not see how hurtful this was? When I arrived home, I sat down and tried to make sense of it. I replayed every memory of raising her, wondering if I'd made a mistake somewhere. Did I not show her enough affection? Did I make her feel like I wasn't there for her? But no, that wasn't it. I knew what this was. This was Vanessa. She'd been cultivating this for years, planting ideas, distorting the truth until Emily believed Greg deserved this moment more than I did. The following day I made a decision. If I wasn't significant enough to walk my own daughter down the aisle, then I wasn't going to help pay for the wedding either. I called Emily and told her directly, "Look, I love you and I want you to have the wedding you want, but I can't support something that pushes me aside." She didn't argue. She just said, "I understand," in a quiet voice that made me feel like the villain. But what was I supposed to do? Smile and write a check while Greg assumed the role I'd spent 26 years earning? No thanks. Vanessa, of course, wasted no time intervening. She called me a few days later, all feigned sweetness. "James, I heard you're not helping with the wedding anymore. Emily's really upset." "Yeah, well, maybe she should have considered that before asking Greg to take my place," I retorted. "James, don't be so dramatic," she said, as if I were overreacting. "This isn't about you. It's about making everyone feel included." I laughed bitterly. Right, included except for the guy who actually raised her. Vanessa sighed as if she were weary of dealing with me. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Can't you just be happy for her?" Happy? That was rich coming from the woman who abandoned her child and then swooped back in to manipulate the facts. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. After that, things became strained. Emily barely called, and when she did, it felt forced. Vanessa and Greg were clearly taking center stage in her life, and I was being increasingly marginalized. I kept telling myself this was her choice, that I had to respect it, even if it felt like a direct insult. But deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being replaced, not just on her wedding day but in her life. So, after that dinner and the phone call with Vanessa, I was pretty much done bending over backward to make things easier for Emily. At first I thought maybe she would come around, maybe she'd realize how much this was hurting me and reconsider the whole Greg walking her down the aisle thing. But no. If anything, it felt like she intensified her stance. She started acting differently. Distant, even cold. She wasn't overtly rude, but you know when someone is being polite simply to maintain peace? That was Emily. Conversations that used to flow naturally now felt forced, as if she were just going through the motions. One day I called her to check in as I usually did. "Hey Em, how's everything going?" "It's fine," she said, her tone curt. "I'm really busy with wedding stuff. Anything you need help with?" I asked even though I knew the answer. "No, Mom and Greg are handling most of it." Of course they were. Stung, but I didn't push. If she didn't want my help unless it was financial, I wasn't going to beg for crumbs. Still, it was difficult not to feel as though I'd been entirely pushed out of her life. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything. Vanessa naturally was relishing every moment of it. She kept appearing with her subtle, aggressive comments like, "Oh, Greg is so excited to be such an important part of Emily's big day." Or, "Emily's been relying on Greg so much lately. It's really brought them closer." I wanted to tell her to go away, but I knew that would only exacerbate the situation. Vanessa had a knack for transforming every circumstance into a display of self-pity. If I reacted sharply, she'd simply use it as more ammunition to portray me as the unreasonable, resentful ex. The final insult came when I discovered Vanessa and Greg had essentially taken over the entire wedding. Emily didn't even bother informing me about some of the significant decisions. I only heard about them through my sister Laura, who was still attempting to mediate. "Emily told me she's having Mom and Greg sit at the head table with her and Ryan," Laura mentioned casually one day. "What about me?" I asked even though I already knew the answer. She said, "You'll be at the family table with the other relatives." And if that wasn't enough, Emily started taking things a step further. She told Laura that she didn't think I should even give a speech at the wedding. "It'd be awkward," she said, "since Greg's walking me down the aisle. We don't want it to seem like Dad's overshadowing him." Overshadowing him? Are you serious? The man didn't even enter her life until she was almost an adult, and now he deserved a moment in the spotlight while I was supposed to sit quietly in the back? It worsened. Laura later mentioned that Vanessa and Emily were considering omitting my name from the wedding program entirely. No father of the bride, no acknowledgement of my role in her life, just Vanessa and Greg front and center. When I heard that, I knew there was no point in trying any longer. They weren't just sidelining me. They were completely erasing me. If that's what they desired, fine. But I wasn't going to remain and allow it to happen. After everything that transpired, I finally reached my breaking point. I wasn't going to sit at that wedding, smile politely, and watch some man walk my daughter down the aisle while I applauded from the sidelines. No, that wasn't happening. I spent a couple of days pondering it, trying to weigh my options. Could I tolerate it and go just to avoid the drama? Perhaps. But the more I considered it, the angrier I became. Why should I? I raised Emily. I was present for everything while Vanessa disappeared and Greg didn't even know she existed. And now I was supposed to sit there and be agreeable? No way. So I made up my mind. I wasn't attending the wedding. When I first informed Laura, my sister, she wasn't exactly thrilled. "James, she's your daughter," she said, exasperated. "You'll regret not being there." "No, Laura," I replied. "What I'd regret is sitting there watching Greg do what I should be doing. This isn't about me being petty. It's about respect, and Emily's made it clear where I stand." Laura sighed, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. "I understand, but don't you think skipping the wedding will just make things worse? You're handing Vanessa and Greg the narrative on a silver platter." She wasn't wrong, but I wasn't about to back down. "They're going to distort it no matter what I do," I said. "At least this way, I'm not tormenting myself." And indeed they did distort it. As soon as Vanessa caught wind of my decision, the phone calls began. At first, she adopted the concerned co-parent persona. "James, are you seriously not coming? Do you realize how much this will hurt Emily?" She's the one who decided to hurt me, Vanessa, I replied calmly. I'm just responding to her choice. Don't be ridiculous, Vanessa said, her tone dripping with condescension. This isn't about you. It's about Emily and her big day. I know exactly what it's about, I retorted. It's about you and Greg taking over, like you've been attempting to do since you re-entered her life. I'm not cooperating. That's when Vanessa changed tactics. She went from concerned to overtly manipulative. If you don't come, everyone's going to see what kind of father you really are, she said. You're going to embarrass Emily in front of all her guests. I laughed, but it wasn't because I found it humorous. Oh, Vanessa, you've been painting me as the bad guy for years. Don't act like this is something new. If Emily's embarrassed, maybe she should consider why I feel the way I do. Vanessa didn't like that answer. She ended the call, but I knew it wasn't over. Next, Emily called. She didn't come out swinging like her mother, but I could hear the frustration in her voice. Dad, what's this about you not coming to the wedding? I took a deep breath. Emily, I've considered this extensively, and I simply cannot do it. I can't sit there and watch someone else take my place. It's not fair to me. It's not about replacing you, she said, her voice rising. I told you that already. Greg's been important to me too. And what about me, Emily? I asked. Where do I fit in? You've made all these decisions to push me aside, and now you're asking me to just show up and applaud politely? I can't do that. Emily sighed heavily, as if she were the one being wronged. I'm trying to make everyone happy, Dad. Why do you have to make this harder? I'm not making it harder, I said firmly. I'm standing up for myself. You made your choice and this is mine. That didn't go over well. She muttered something about me being selfish and hung up. I sat there for a while after the call, but I knew I couldn't give in. Then the guilt tripping commenced. Vanessa started calling family members, telling them I was abandoning Emily on her wedding day. Suddenly, I had cousins, uncles, and even my aunt, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, calling me to offer their opinions. James, come on, one of my cousins said. It's just one day. Don't let this ruin your relationship with Emily. It's not one day, I replied. It's the result of years of Vanessa twisting things to suit her benefit. This is just the final straw. Even my mother chimed in, and while she meant well, it still stung. Honey, you've always been such a good father. Don't let this be the thing Emily remembers. Mom, she's the one who decided to exclude me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not going to sit there and let her and Vanessa act like I don't exist. No matter how much they tried to make me feel guilty, I didn't yield. I knew they were all receiving their version of the story from Vanessa and Emily, and no one cared to ask me how I felt. The days leading up to the wedding were difficult. Everywhere I turned, someone was asking if I was excited or ready for the big day. I just smiled and nodded, keeping my decision to myself. The last thing I wanted was more people criticizing me. On the day of the wedding, I remained at home. I didn't want to be anywhere near the commotion. I spent the day cleaning the house, organizing my garage, anything to distract myself from what was happening. Laura texted me later that evening. Well, you missed quite the spectacle. What happened? I asked, half interested. Vanessa gave a speech about how Greg stepped up as a father figure. Not a single mention of you. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt. Figures, I replied. Despite everything, I didn't regret my decision. Being at that wedding would have been like adding insult to injury. By staying home, I at least maintained my dignity. Vanessa and Emily could fabricate their stories however they wished, but I knew the truth. Sometimes standing up for yourself means walking away, no matter how much it hurts. After missing the wedding, I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything. I kept returning to one question. If Emily was so willing to sideline me in her life now, what did that mean for the future? I realized that if Emily could do this now, then it wasn't a stretch to imagine her continuing to embrace Vanessa's narrative as time went on. What if this was just the beginning? What if the rest of my life was going to be spent as a minor detail in Emily's story while Greg and Vanessa took center stage? I couldn't allow that to happen. That's when I decided to alter my will. This was about safeguarding myself. If she wanted Greg to be the one she considered her father, then fine. He could assume all the responsibilities that came with that role even after I was gone. The following morning, I contacted my attorney and scheduled an appointment. When I arrived at his office, I informed him I wanted to remove Emily as my beneficiary, and instead leave everything to Charity and my sister Laura. My attorney raised an eyebrow but said little. He asked a few questions likely to ensure I wasn't acting purely out of anger, but I explained my reasoning. She's chosen someone else to fill that role in her life, I said. I'm just making it official. The process was straightforward, but I left that office feeling a peculiar blend of relief and sadness. On one hand, I felt like I was finally asserting myself. On the other hand, it was difficult to relinquish the vision I'd always held for the future, one where Emily and I were close, where I got to watch her flourish in her life and family. I thought this decision would remain private for a long time, perhaps even until after I was gone, but somehow Emily found out within days. My guess is that Laura let it slip, though she insists she didn't. Either way, the phone call I received from Emily was anything but pleasant. "Dad, what in the world is this about you cutting me out of your will?" she said, not even bothering with a greeting. I sighed, already preparing myself for the argument. "I think you already know why, Emily." "No, I don't," she snapped. "You're just doing this to punish me, aren't you?" "Not at all," I said calmly. "This isn't about punishment, it's about boundaries. You made your choice and now I'm making mine." She was quiet for a moment then said, "You're being absurd. You're my father. Just because I included Greg doesn't mean you don't matter to me." "Actions speak louder than words," I replied. "You didn't just include Greg. You chose him. You made it clear who you see as your father in the moments that matter most, and I'm respecting that choice by stepping back." Her voice started to waver, and I could tell she was becoming emotional. "So that's it? You're just cutting me off entirely?" "No, let's call it something else," I said firmly. "I'm drawing a line. I've spent years prioritizing you, Emily, but I won't continue doing it if you don't value what I've done for you." She didn't say much after that. She muttered something about how unfair I was being and hung up. For the next few days, I kept expecting her to call back and try to discuss things, but the phone remained silent. Instead, I started hearing from other family members, people who had clearly received Vanessa's version of the story. Vanessa, of course, embraced the news and ran with it. She called Laura, telling her how cruel I was being and how much this was hurting Emily. She even informed a few relatives that I had disowned Emily completely. But here's the thing, I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. I wasn't going to let Vanessa or anyone else dictate how I should feel, or what I should do. A week or so later, I received one last call from Emily. This time she wasn't yelling, but her tone was colder than I'd ever heard before. "I just want to know one thing," she said. "Do you even care about me at all anymore?" I felt my heart sink, but I remained steadfast. "Of course I care about you, Emily. I always will. But caring about you doesn't mean letting you treat me like I don't matter. You damaged something between you and me that would take ages to mend, if ever." She didn't say much after that. She thanked me for being honest in the most sarcastic tone imaginable and hung up. Severing ties wasn't easy. For weeks, I kept wondering if I'd made the correct decision. But every time I thought about it, I came back to the same conclusion. I had to protect myself. If Emily couldn't perceive the worth in what I'd done for her, then I wasn't going to keep investing energy into a one-sided relationship. After that, I assumed they would proceed with their lives and I would proceed with mine. But what I didn't anticipate was for Vanessa's web of deceit to begin unraveling so swiftly, or for it to occur in such a public manner. It all started with my sister Laura. She'd been holding her tongue for months, attempting to remain impartial, but after witnessing how Vanessa and Emily twisted the story, she'd had enough. "James," she told me one afternoon, "I've kept silent for too long. Vanessa's been speaking poorly about you to anyone who will listen, and it's repulsive. People need to know the truth." "Laura, it's not worth it," I said, not wanting her to get embroiled in the drama. "No," she said firmly, "it is worth it. Vanessa's been maligning you for years, and Emily's believing every word of it. If I don't say something, no one will." I didn't try to stop her. Honestly, a part of me desired the truth to emerge. The turning point came at a family gathering at Laura's house. Vanessa wasn't there, thankfully, but Emily showed up, and of course she was all smiles, acting as if nothing were amiss. Laura saw her and could no longer restrain herself. "So, Emily," Laura said, loud enough for the room to hear, "do you truly believe all that nonsense your mom's been feeding you about why she left?" Emily froze, clearly taken aback. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your mom spreading rumors to everyone that James was controlling and that's why she departed," Laura said, her voice sharp. "You think that's the truth?" Emily looked uncomfortable. "That's what Mom told me." "Well, she's lying," Laura snapped. "You want to know the real reason your mom left? It wasn't because of your dad. It was because she had an affair and got pregnant. She abandoned you because she didn't want to face the consequences. Your dad remained, raised you, and never uttered a word about it because he didn't want to tarnish your image of her. And this is how you repay him." Emily said nothing. She just stood there, her mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to formulate a response. "I wasn't present for this conversation, but Laura called me later to fill me in." "I'm sorry, James," she said. "I know it wasn't my place to say anything, but I couldn't bear it anymore." Emily needed to hear the truth. "Don't apologize," I told her. "It's about time someone said it." The repercussions were immediate. Emily confronted Vanessa, and of course Vanessa denied everything initially. But the thing about falsehoods is that they're hard to maintain, especially when people start asking questions. Apparently, Greg overheard one of these arguments between Vanessa and Emily, and that's when things truly began to fall apart. From what I gathered, he'd had no idea about Vanessa's past. She'd portrayed herself as the victim for so long that even he believed her version of the story. Discovering she'd lied about something so significant shook him to his core. "You mean to tell me you had an affair and a child and never told me?" Greg reportedly said during one of their heated disputes. "It's not like that," Vanessa yelled. "That was years ago. It doesn't matter anymore." "It matters to me," Greg retorted. "You've been lying to me this entire time. How am I supposed to trust you now?" Greg didn't stay long after that. Word spread rather quickly that he'd packed his belongings and left. Vanessa tried to manipulate it, of course, saying Greg couldn't handle the truth and was abandoning her. But by that point, people were starting to see through her act. Even Emily seemed to be questioning everything. She stopped calling or texting me, but Laura said she was clearly struggling with what she'd learned. "She doesn't know what to believe anymore," Laura told me. Vanessa's lies are unraveling, and Emily's realizing how much of it she accepted. I wish I could say I felt vindicated, but honestly it just saddened me. I didn't want Emily to suffer. I wanted her to see the truth before things became this complicated. But sometimes people have to reach rock bottom before they can begin to rebuild. Vanessa, meanwhile, was in full damage control mode. She started reaching out to people, attempting to present the story in her favor, but the more she spoke, the worse it became. People who had once believed her began distancing themselves, recognizing her for the manipulative person she was. It wasn't just family either. Vanessa's friends, people who had supported her for years, started keeping their distance. No one enjoys being deceived, and Vanessa had been lying for a long time. Emily hasn't contacted me since everything unfolded, but I know she's heard the truth now. Whether or not she believes it is her decision. I'm not anticipating an apology or a reconciliation, but I hope she takes some time to truly consider everything. I kept to myself for the next few weeks. I thought I was making progress, until one day there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Emily standing there. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I reminded myself of everything that had occurred. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my expression neutral. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk," she said, shifting nervously. "Please." I let out a long breath. Part of me wanted to shut the door, but another part, the part that still remembered rocking her to sleep as a baby, couldn't do it. "All right," I said, stepping aside. She sat on the couch and I remained standing, crossing my arms. "What is this about?" She looked down at her hands, clearly struggling to find the words. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About the wedding, about Mom, about how I treated you." I didn't say anything, just waited for her to continue. "I know I made a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "I let Mom influence me, and I didn't stop to consider how much it was hurting you. I made you feel like you didn't matter, and that's the last thing I ever intended." Her words hung in the air, but they didn't land the way I think she expected. I'd waited so long to hear her acknowledge the truth, but now that she was saying it, it didn't feel sufficient. Why now, Emily? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Why come here now after everything? She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Because I'm sorry. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to set things right. I want to fix this. I let out a bitter laugh. Fix this, Emily? This isn't something you can just fix. You didn't just hurt me. You replaced me. You made it clear that Greg and Vanessa were your priority, and now that it's all falling apart, you want to come back and pick up where we left off. That's not what I'm saying, she said, her voice cracking. I miss you, Dad. I miss us. I shook my head, feeling more drained than angry. Emily, I spent 26 years putting you first. I gave you everything I had, and when it came time for you to show me even a fraction of that loyalty, you chose them. Do you have any idea what that felt like? She didn't answer, just wiped at her face as the tears began to fall. I'm glad you're starting to see the truth about Vanessa, I continued. But this isn't just about her lies. This is about trust, Emily, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked like she wanted to vanish into the couch. So that's it? She asked. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I don't know what the future holds, Emily, but right now I need space. I need time to heal, and I can't do that with you in my life. She sat there for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to argue or simply accept it. Eventually she nodded. I understand, she whispered. I walked her to the door, and as she stepped outside she turned back to me. I really am sorry, Dad. I hope one day you can forgive me. I didn't say anything, just gave her a small nod before closing the door. Vanessa, meanwhile, was still dealing with her own consequences. Word got around that Greg had filed for divorce, and most of the family had distanced themselves from her. She was on her own, and honestly I didn't care. She made her own bed. I'm not saying it's been effortless. There are still days when I miss the way things used to be with Emily, before Vanessa returned and disrupted everything. But I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to detach from people who cause you pain, even if they are family. Perhaps one day, Emily and I will discover a path back to each other. But for now, I am at peace with my decision. I've spent enough of my life giving to individuals who didn't appreciate me. It's time to prioritize myself.